Hi, and welcome to the Geography Department Open Evening. I'm Laura Strong. I'm head of department here at the college, and I'm joined with my colleague Emma Lacey and two students from Year 13 who are going to be taking you through a little bit about what we have to offer here at Hills Road. I'm absolutely delighted that you're considering studying geography. Hopefully you will find the next few slides informative, but we will have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the introduction, which should last between about 15 and 20 minutes. Okay, so geography is a very important subject. Without it, we can't explain the world around us, and almost everything has a geographical dimension. So it's a very highly relevant subject to take. And some of my favorite quotes about the discipline are from Professor of Geography at Oxford University called Danny Dorling. And he writes and mentions that geography is about the energy that builds and destroys mountains, and also that same energy that drives our weather and climate. So it's important, big processes that we're learning about in geography, and that's the physical side. But of course, all of that gets even more complex when we consider the involvement of humans as well. So we have this dual aspect to our discipline, the physical geography, the human geography, and the interaction between the two as well. So that diversity is reflected in our curriculum. We study with OCR exam board, and there are really four aspects to the geography A level. So we have a physical paper where we study coastal landscapes, and also a topic called Earth Life Support, which is very much about ecosystems and the functioning of the water and carbon cycle. And that's worth 22% of the A level. Paper 2, we study human interactions. Here we look at urban environments, also very topical aspects of geography like global migration and political geography in power and borders too. This is also worth 22% of the A level. And then our final exam paper, we have geographical debates, where we look at some of the classic geographical topics like earth hazards. We look at volcanoes and earthquakes and their effects in different physical settings and in countries of different development status. And also, very relevant at the moment, we have a module called Disease Dilemmas, where we look at global patterns in the spread of infectious diseases, non-infectious diseases, why we find certain diseases in some parts of the world and not others, what are governments, NGOs, what are they doing about it, what are they not doing about it, and a topic that students really do enjoy, and something that the current situation has also given us a lot of food for thought. So those are the three exam papers that cover a real breadth of topics within the discipline. There is also a coursework element. This is worth 20% at the A level and is known as the non-examined assessment. And this is a written report, approximately 4,000 words, and students are allowed to investigate and research any aspect of geography that they're particularly interested in, with the caveat that it has to be related to the specification. So this is something that kind of, organized and diligent students do very well at, because it requires quite a bit of independent work, but certainly this is something that students are also well supported to achieve within the department with guidance from their teachers as well. So it's a very varied course of study. As such, you would expect that the range of skills that students will gain are quite diverse. So we have the quantitative skills, where students are very comfortable dealing with numbers, performing statistical analysis on data sets, but at the same time, they'll also get exposed to writing essays and writing reports. So geography students tend to be very well-rounded and comfortable with both of those core aspects, working with numbers and working with words. The two areas of skills, really, that are unique to our discipline include work on geographical information systems. So probably many of you recently, checking the latest updates on coronavirus, will have seen maps showing you outbreaks in certain areas, really localized maps. So the one that I've included is Greater Manchester on the bottom left of the screen. And students that study geography at Hills Road will learn how to create and publish maps like this using ArcGIS software. So this is a skill that is unique to geography, and students will get a good grounding in how to use that software here. Similarly, some of the other practical skills that are also unique to geography include going out into the field and gathering measurements. So I'll explain a little bit more about the field work shortly, but they will be, for instance, measuring levels on beaches with equipment and calculating pebble size and all sorts of other bits of data. So for those students that enjoy practical application, geography is also a good choice to consider. So on the fieldwork here, you can see on the left-hand side, we have students that are learning outdoors and taking a field sketch of a cliff line in North Norfolk. So this is part of our compulsory fieldwork. So a core element of the A-level geography course is 4 days of fieldwork. 3 of those we typically undertake on the Norfolk coastline, covering both physical and human geography fieldwork. When we can, we also take students on an optional field trip. And in the past, we have been to locations like Iceland, Sicily, and China. But of course, this year, unfortunately, that has been disrupted, but we hope to reinstate that when it is safe and possible to do so. So there's a real opportunity to extend some of their in-class learning outdoors, to bring it alive for geographers. In terms of the support that we offer, we like to think about this within the department as support within the class and also outside of class. So I'll begin with thinking about what we do for students within the classroom environment. So quite a lot of thought goes into the development of our carefully sequenced curriculum. So for instance, much of the focus in the first half of year 12 is to build skills that will enable students to carry out their coursework effectively. So we try to do mini trips in the Cambridge area, build familiarity with some of the ArcGIS programs, and set them up for success when it comes to that independent investigation. We also make links between modules to try to increase understanding and depth of what it is students are studying. And this also goes some way to preparing students for synoptic questions that are part of the paper 3 geographical debates. And there is a big focus within the department on application of knowledge. So at every stage of learning, we do consider exam questions and how students can apply what they have learned to likely exam questions for a given topic. Outside of class, we offer support sessions. So typically in a normal year, these would be within the department in classrooms on a lunchtime. We've had to switch to online this year, but that seems to be working okay so far. We also have subscriptions to various organizations such as the Geographical Association, the Royal Geographical Society, and Geography Review magazine. So there's a wealth of information, both written articles, online lectures, podcasts that students are able to access to extend their knowledge about the topics that we are learning, and indeed many that we are not. And students also know that in geography, we have an open door policy. And if a student wants to meet with a teacher to discuss any aspect of their learning, they're able to do this when they please. And we have actually found that with the move to Microsoft Teams, this is something that we can facilitate even more easily, that we can just call them on an audio call when they're at home and have a quick conversation about what it is they might be struggling with in terms of their learning. So support is something that we are very focused on within the geography department. Related to this, it's also important to think about student assessment and progression within the overall course. So we have a general rule of thumb that a student will at least have one piece of teacher assessed work per half term, but often this is exceeded. So for instance, if you have a look on the right hand side of the screen, you will see that this term, for the 2 Year 12 modules, students are getting 2 essay questions marked by their teacher and also an end of topic test. But that is only one aspect of assessment, so the teacher assessed work. We're very keen on supplementing this with regular peer and self-assessment. And this is very helpful for students to familiarize themselves with exam technique and familiarity with mark schemes as well. So we use a range of tools for student assessment within the department. And of course, we also have and take part in that whole college assessment. So there is an end of year exam in year 12 and also a mock in year 13, where the papers sat are a couple of hours long and they mirror exam conditions that they would experience as they would in the actual external A level. So students have 2 opportunities for those kind of those conditions. There are lots of opportunities as well, further opportunities within the department. We offer a geography society where we have a range of different activities occurring. For instance, in non-COVID times, we have had speakers in from the University of Cambridge discussing their research, how it's applicable to our course. For instance, conflict between Ukraine and Crimea. This neatly linked with some of our units for the political geography topic, and also students that were doing some sampling on volcanoes in Hawaii. So it really does vary when we've had speakers in externally. This term, because of online learning, today we just launched a new venture looking at research projects, so active scientific research projects that students can get involved with online. So assessing drone images for various creatures, I think it was marine iguanas in the Galapagos, and also volume of plastic pollution in the oceans around that area. And another project looking at helping to create maps for some countries that don't have them. So that's in conjunction with various aid organizations. So we do work very hard in the department to put on events and areas that we think would be of interest and of benefit to students that go beyond the core curriculum. Fieldwork, I've already discussed. Students really do enjoy that as an opportunity to get to know their peers in a context away from the classroom and to also bring some of that learning to life. Competitions, so I mentioned that we're affiliated with the Geographical Association and with the RGS, the Royal Geographical Society. There are a variety of competitions that run at different points in the year, including Young Geographer of the Year, which many of our students submitted work for in the summer term, and we're waiting to hear back on the results of that later in the autumn term. So there's a huge amount that students are able to tap into as part of the geography department. One very exciting development actually has been the publication and launch of Roots Journal. This was only launched in September of this year, and it's a journal that's purpose is to bridge the gap in scholarship between secondary and higher education, and to give students a positive experience of academic writing and publishing. So this is a journal that students could publish essays, reports, like photo essays, poems, reviews of books or films, any number of different avenues. But it's something that not many other subjects offer. So sixth form teachers, myself included, and various academics in universities across the country give up time to review work from students to publish it in Roots and to give them that opportunity of having published work even potentially before they go to university. Okay, now to think then a little bit more about student performance. So let's give some consideration to how our students have performed over the past 3 years. So you can see on the left-hand side that our grades A star to B are 23% higher than the national average. So the department has strong results when compared to the national geography cohort. We also have 100% pass rate for A star to E over the past 3 years. So what do students go on to do? Typically, it's to progress into higher education, and approximately 15% of students who study geography at Hills Road go on to study geography at university. In the past year, we've had 2 students accepted to study geography at Oxford and also 2 going to Durham. But other popular locations include the University of Nottingham, Bristol, and Leeds. But there's a wide variety of courses that students do go on to study, and reflections from students who return or get back in touch with us at later points, they mentioned that they really found the grounding in geography, so both the focus on numbers and maths as well as report writing and essay writing, very useful and beneficial in their university careers. So geography students, very well-rounded and set up to take on any kind of further study or indeed employment. Okay, so now I'd like to invite Maria and Emily just to give a little bit of a flavour about student experience in the geography department at Hills.
Hi everyone, so I'm Maria and I study geography, biology and history, and just a couple of things that I really love about geography is the kind of the multi-dimensional nature of the subject. So as has already been said, there's a lot of overlap between science and humanities, and there's a really good balance of both and an equal balance of pretty much of physical and human geography, as well as an overlap between the two. And also the different modules we study, they're all very different. And like I said, some relate to human, some relate to physical, and they're all really interesting and very relevant. So for example, the disease module, evidently that's very relevant at the moment, but also migration, climate change, it's all kind of what you're studying, you see in the news, and that's a really nice feeling. So I think if Emily wants to continue on with her experience of the subject.
I think we might be having some technical issues with Emily.
Okay, I can.
Would you like to add, Maria?
The other thing that we both wanted to say is that we felt that we've gotten to know our geography classes and the people in our geography classes really well, and that's partly because of kind of working together in class, so kind of having class debates or working on class projects together, but also the field trip. It's a really good opportunity to get to know people very well because you carry out work with them as well as kind of living in rooms, and it's quite daunting at first, but you get really close to everyone in your class after that, which is a really nice feeling as well. And then a little bit about the difference between GCSE geography and A-level geography. So we've both found, Emily and I both did geography at GCSE, and we found that although there's a lot of similarities, there's a greater emphasis placed on finding kind of synoptic links between modules, which isn't explored so much at GCSE. But generally, the jump from GCSE to A-level geography doesn't feel too great, because you go over a lot of the same kind of key ideas and key concepts. And if Emily is now here, if she wants to take over a bit about that.
Hi, sorry, my computer's quite old. So I'm Emily. I do geography, history, and English at Hills Road. And I think my favourite thing about geography is the fact that it can be applied to almost any aspect of life. As Maria said, there's very relevant topics at the moment, and also it's completely different to any of my subjects, certainly. What we already discussed about loving the subject, as Maria's already mentioned while I was not here. There's a very kind of interactive feel to our lessons. We get to know our fellow students really nicely through debates and talks in class, and also, as you mentioned, the field trip to Norfolk was definitely a good bonding experience. And we have a changing seating plan as well when we were in class last year, which also got helped me to meet all of our classmates on a deeper basis.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for adding your contributions to that. That's really valuable. And I'm sure that many of the students might have some more questions for you both towards the end of the talk. And in fact, I think, we're right at that point already. So you may have been submitting questions during the session. Emma is going to read them out and then direct it to one of us to answer. So we'll start with that next.
Okay, so the most popular question at the moment is how many people are in a class and take the course in general?
Okay, so our maximum class size would be 24, but I would say on average, for the incoming cohort, it tends to be 20, 21 on average across all of the classes. In terms of overall number of students, in year 13 at the moment, we have approximately 160 students taking the course. And in year 12, we have coming up to 175. We've had a couple more students join us in the last week. So those are roughly those numbers.
Okay, there's a lot of questions about how geography sits with other subjects such as economics, sociology and biology. So could you tell us a little bit about how subjects would maybe fit together in a bit more detail, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view as a teacher, in any given class, I will have students who study a really wide range of different combinations. And I think that that really is reflective of the fact that geography both has that link into the natural sciences and physical sciences. So there's clear links with subjects like biology and chemistry, but equally, we also have that branch into the humanities. So many students also studying things like psychology, sociology, English lit. So, you know, it really does fit with a broad range of other subjects. So I don't know, Maria and Emily, would you say that's true in terms of your friends in the different classes? They're studying lots of other subjects.
Yeah, definitely. I know lots of people who are obviously doing more scientific subjects, biology, geology, sciencey subjects, chemistry. But then myself, I do more humanities subjects, English and history, and it goes really nicely with that. Psychology, sociology, basically anything I think you can take with geography, which is really good.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, there was another question about the balance between human and physical geography, but I think you've covered that off already.
Yeah, I'd say it's fairly even. I mean, obviously, we have the two papers, the physical and the human, and so they're reasonably distinct. We have geographical debates where it's much more linked, so integrated study between the two. I think if you take into account the NEA and you get choice of what it is that you want to study, you could probably kind of tip it either way. So if you feel like you're more of a physical geographer and you then, let's say you study a project looking at coast or forests, or if you're a human geographer and you start to look at urban, you can kind of shift that balance in your preference, really.
Yeah, I agree. What grades at GCSE do you have to do to do A-level geography here?
So if you've studied geography, we look for a grade 6. But if you haven't, then we look for a grade 4 and above in English or maths.
Yeah, there were other questions about whether you have to do GCSE geography in order to do the A-level, so that ticks that off as well.
Yeah, so I'd say the vast majority of our students have studied geography, but every year we will have probably no more than a handful that haven't, but they tend to cope reasonably well. Like Maria and Emily have explained, that we kind of build from what you know upwards. So there is a bit of a recap from things like concepts that you will have learned as part of GCSE.
So there's a couple of questions again. I think Emily, you might have mentioned and touched on this about how the A-level builds from the GCSE. So how much would you say that you've already covered at GCSE? Is it similar with regards to case studies, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, Maria can add to this obviously as well, but I think some of it is definitely similar to GCSE. I know I did coastal landscapes at GCSE, and some key concepts are quite similar, but then there's more emphasis on links between different modules. So at the moment we're doing hazards, and we're learning about how that links to coastal landscapes and human geography as well. So it's broadly, there's some similarities, but there's definitely a step up, I think.
Anything in addition to that, Maria?
No, I would say that's pretty much the same. And equally, if you haven't studied geography, I've got a few close friends that haven't, and they've actually found the transition really simple, and they really enjoy the subject, especially because the skills you learn, so kind of skills, analysing primary data, putting together an argument, structuring an essay, it's applicable to pretty much any subject, so it's really helpful.
Thank you. So there's a question, a very specific question about the highest mark question that can be on a paper in geography.
So the highest tariff question is 33. So this is one of our extended essay questions. And again, I guess relating back to what I discussed earlier about the carefully sequenced curriculum, this is something that we explore in year 13. So if that sounds incredibly daunting, it shouldn't, because when you begin in year 12, we will look at 8-mark questions, we will build up to 16-mark questions, and you'll soon realize that a 33-mark question is just it's a longer, extended version of what you're already pretty comfortable with by that point. So it's not something to worry about, is my main message.
I think you've answered the next question. What grade of maths at GCSE would one need to manage the math side of the syllabus?
Yeah, so it's 4.
Yeah. A question, is any part of the exam through a field trip? I know you've talked about the field trips that we go on, but I wonder if you could just clarify that.
Sorry, so
Is any part of the exam through a field trip?
No, not in the same way that you're examined at GCSE. So the papers that we have are distinct, so physical, human, geographical debates. It might be that in one question you might be asked to maybe comment on a sampling strategy for a low tariff question, but it would be a very small percentage of the overall marks available, and one that you would be very well prepared to answer following our field trip days in the department.
Okay, so there's a question about A-level geography and an IB geography. How different is it?
Very different. So IB is a completely a separate qualification where you will study a much broader range of subjects than you would taking 3 or 4 A levels. So it's IB geography is not something that I have taught before, so I wouldn't want to be very specific about that. But because you are taking a smaller number of subjects, you're going into the discipline in a lot more detail. So for A-level geography, your depth of knowledge would definitely be higher taking OCR geography like we do here at Hills.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. How well do us as teachers get to know our students?
I think that's one that the students should answer.
I think so as well.
Do you want to go, Maria?
It's difficult to say. I mean, from a kind of perspective of how much individual support you get, I found that there's never been a time that I haven't felt that I could just turn to one of my teachers and say, I'm really sorry, I don't understand the topic, and some individual help would be really helpful and would really help me understand it. Or particularly with the coursework, kind of, there's definitely been an atmosphere if you don't understand something or it's not quite going quite right, don't panic, because there's always somewhere there to help. So that's just a really nice feeling as well.
I think also the field trips really help us to get to know students, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I do. I think that it is a really nice opportunity in later on in year 12 when we're all together for a number of days out in the field, potentially challenging weather conditions. And yeah, I think everyone really gets to know each other well at that point. But yeah, I mean, we see, so any geography student joining the department would have 2 teachers, and you would see both of those teachers for 2 hours per week. So in a class of 22 students, I do feel like, from my point of view, that I know my students pretty well.
Good. Okay, so there was a question about geology and geography. So obviously, somebody's looking to study geography and geology together. We have a potential volcanologist on our hands here, I think, asking advice about the third subject. So, a science, which do you think would fit best?
So I think for students that really want to go down that avenue, I think often it would be geography, geology, and chemistry. But I won't spoil that surprise that you will probably be tuning in to hear Dr. Jones discuss geology tomorrow night, and he will give you further details on that and the careers that you can take with geology too.
Excellent. How much work do we expect students to do every week?
So for each subject at Hills, we say between 4 and 5 hours of independent work. Much of that is directed by your class teacher, but equally, I mentioned earlier, we have subscriptions to things like the Royal Geographical Society and the Geographical Association, and those are 2 great avenues that you could, if you wanted to, go and explore further information about our curriculum areas and beyond.
Okay, so there's a question about stats here. How much statistical analysis is there in the course? So a very specific question again about the maths element.
So in terms of the exam and statistical analysis, it might be a low tariff question on one of the papers asking you to interpret a result of a stat relevant to geographical inquiry. So whether that's the size of pebbles along a stretch of coastline, or whether that is, off the top of my head, how house prices might change from the center of an urban area, 2 examples. So you wouldn't, in the exam, be expected to crunch the numbers as such and carry out the full statistic, but you might have to interpret the result. Okay. So that's the inferential statistics. Some of the descriptive stats that could include things like calculate the mean, the median, the interquartile range. You may well have to do that in the exam. And then as part of the coursework, if a statistical test was appropriate, you could also carry out that within the coursework element, but you have a bit of choice and freedom there. So if you're someone that thinks, I don't enjoy maths, I'm not that comfortable with it, you could do a piece of coursework that relied largely on qualitative analysis. So maybe conducting interviews, field sketching in urban areas, taking photographs, that type of thing. So there are ways around it for students that aren't particularly comfortable with numbers, but definitely basic of GCSE maths and those descriptive statistics would be important.
Yeah. So a question about case studies. Are there case studies in GCSE?
Sorry, I didn't catch the bit of feedback.
Are there case studies like in GCSE?
Of course, it wouldn't be geography if there weren't case studies. And I think that the important aspect when you remember about case studies is that, yes, you do need to know some facts for each of your case studies because that's the contextual knowledge. And as geographers, we should have that. But increasingly important at A level is being able to make comparisons between different places. So if we have an earthquake in two different countries and it shares all of the same physical attributes, but the experience is very different. Why is that the case? So it's about using some of your factual knowledge, being able to make an argument. So that jump to A level involves much more analysis, comparison, evaluation, probably than what you've done at GCSE. So it's not just about remembering the facts, but you still have to remember some.
Okay, so there's a question also about fieldwork data collection and COVID. So girls, did you have to alter your data collection this year in any way for your NEA?
I personally didn't. So I was still able to go out and collect environmental quality survey because that's something you can do by yourself. And I kind of walked around and did that. And equally with questionnaires, I know lots of people decided to do them online, but I still managed to collect mine by asking questions and kind of annoying the public, essentially. But everyone was very friendly and it seems very daunting and I was dreading doing it, but it really isn't too bad.
Good, thank you. Did you have to change anything, Emily?
No, so I was quite lucky. I did mine quite early on. So my NEA was in Paris, actually, so that would have been quite a problem if I'd left it later. No, I went on a trip to Paris and asked questions to locals, took photos, so luckily I got it all done, the data collection, before anything happened.
Excellent, good. Somebody wants to know about the type of online learning we were using during lockdown. I guess, you know, in the case that this may well drag on a lot longer than the rest of us, than we want. So
we use Microsoft Teams, and I have to say that it was a very quick learning curve, and something that our whole department, I feel, adapted to quickly. We started off looking at narrated PowerPoints and then moved towards live sessions. And I think both Maria and Emily can comment on this, but both staff and students really enjoyed and saw the benefit of those live sessions. And clearly, at the moment, we're still on a blended learning model. So it's a week in college, week off college. And in the off college week, it's learning on Microsoft Teams. So I don't know, Emily and Maria, if you want to say anything about your experience of Teams in the geography department.
Yeah, I think there's always kind of the fear that it's going to be less interactive, it's not going to work as well as in the classroom, but I think there's chat function on Team, we had quite a few lives, and yeah, I think it works pretty well in circumstances, and it still is working well when we're online.
Okay, so somebody wants to know, thinking about NEA, about their coursework, what type of typical projects do we see students producing?
It varies a lot. So you've just heard about Emily's fascinating project into representations of Paris. That was a very novel idea. Many students they might pick, let's say, 2 wards within Cambridge and start to look at maybe to what extent is deprivation a reality in some of the wards. So we look at the index of multiple deprivation, and we can see relative to other locations, is it more or less deprived? Then they might go out and do an environmental quality survey, maybe some questionnaires with locals, that type of thing. So that project is probably one of the most common human geography elements with various twists. So every project is unique. We also have, on the physical side, many students thinking about the coastal theory, maybe, what's the impact of a groin or a seawall in beach profiles, the distribution of sediment, that type of thing. But you really can get creative with it, so long as there is a little link into the spec there somewhere.
So kind of looking beyond the A-level, what jobs or careers does the typical A-level geographer end up with?
A huge variety is the answer to that. And I'm sure that you can think of many kind of traditional examples that could be given to you, maybe things like urban planning, environmental health, really all sorts of jobs. One area, I guess, unique to geography is the GIS. So the creation of these interactive maps, and their GIS analysts are employed in all sorts of industries, so both public and private sector. So you will have people that work for companies like Sainsbury's using it to try to work out where they can open a new store and generate profit depending on the demographic of people in the local area and the other shops and services that are available. It's used a lot as well within the military, so being able to plot routes over mountainous terrain to keep you maybe shaded and not visible from enemy forces. So the GIS has a huge range of application, but a very wide variety of jobs. And what I would say, if you're not sure what it is that you want to do, on kind of general graduate management fast track programs, geography graduates are very well regarded. And the reason for that is we have graduates that are very comfortable with dealing with numbers, so the numerical side of the discipline, but also they're comfortable in writing reports and essays. So you have literate and numerate graduates who are also comfortable using computers. So that's what most companies want, is a well-rounded student, and geography is well equipped to provide employers with that.
Thank you. So there's a question about independent work. Does it take the form of revision or actually teaching yourself material?
So it's a bit of both. I mean, we're really keen on maximizing class time with students. So we would very much avoid any kind of activity in class that would involve you taking notes from the textbook and just using class time in that way. We'd be more likely to perhaps get you to do an activity like that for homework, or do some reading about factual aspects or the theory of something, and then deal with that base knowledge that you've been able to pick up at home and extend it further. So you wouldn't be left completely to study something on your own at home that wouldn't be then discussed, addressed in the classroom. But we find that works well to make most productive use of lesson time.
Good. Okay, I think that is all we have time for now. So I don't know if you want to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening. I hope that that I've interested you in the subject, and if you have further questions, please do feel free to get in touch. And a very big thank you to both Maria and Emily for giving up their evenings to also give you a bit of a flavour for what we have on offer here at Hills. Thank you.
Thank you.